In 1882, Montana, Jacob Mercer pressed his dying son against his chest and watched the infant's lips turn blue. 4 days without milk. 47 doors slammed in his face. His wife Sarah lay frozen in the ground, and now their baby was following her into darkness. But on the coldest night Stillwater Creek had ever seen, a grieving widow made a choice that would defy everything the town believed about love loss and redemption. Stay with me until the end. Subscribe now and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Jacob Mercer had stopped counting the doors after 30. Now he stood in the blizzard, his newborn son wrapped in every blanket he owned, and stared at the small house with the green shutters, the last house on the last street in Stillwater Creek. Behind him, the town had gone dark. Decent folks were inside, warm-fed, alive. His son was none of those things. "Thomas," Jacob's voice cracked. "Stay with me, boy. Just a little longer." The baby didn't respond. Hadn't cried in 6 hours. That silence terrified Jacob more than any scream could. 4 days ago, Sarah had been laughing about the color they'd paint the nursery. 3 days ago, she'd gone into labor. 2 days ago, she'd died with their son in her arms, her last words a name she'd chosen months before. Thomas. Call him Thomas. Jacob had promised. He'd held her hand and sworn their boy would live, would grow, would know how much his mother loved him. Now Thomas was dying too, and Jacob's promise was turning to ash. He climbed the porch steps. His boots left bloody prints he'd worn through the soles, walking from farm to farm, house to house, begging for the one thing his son needed to survive. Milk. Human milk. Something Thomas's tiny body would accept when it rejected everything else. 47 times he'd explained. 47 times he'd begged. 47 times the answer had been no. Can't help you. Don't have what you need. Try someone else. And the worst ones, that baby's cursed. Best let nature take its course. Jacob raised his fist to knock, then stopped. His hand was shaking so bad he could barely form a fist. When had he last eaten? Slept. He couldn't remember. Didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the small, still bundle against his chest. He knocked. The sound echoed in the frozen night. Wind howled around the corner of the house, driving snow into his face. Jacob weighted his body, blocking the worst of the storm from Thomas. No answer. He knocked again, harder. "Please." His voice came out rough, broken. "Please, I need help. My baby's dying." Still nothing. Jacob leaned his forehead against the door. This was it. The end. He'd tried everything, asked everyone, and Stillwater Creek had given its answer. Let the baby die. The door opened so fast, Jacob nearly fell through it. A woman stood in the doorway, a lamp in her hand. Dark hair pulled back, eyes that held something Jacob recognized, the flat, exhausted look of someone who'd stopped expecting anything good from life. "What do you want?" Her voice was cold. Not cruel, just empty. "My son." Jacob held out the bundle. His arms shook with the effort. "He's 4 days old. His mother died birthing him. He won't take cow's milk, goat's milk, anything. He's starving to death, and I've asked everyone in this town, and no one will help, and I don't know what else to do." The words poured out desperate and raw. Jacob heard himself and hated how weak he sounded. He'd been a deputy once. He'd faced down outlaws and rustlers. Now he was begging a stranger for his son's life. The woman Clara he'd remember later, her name was Clara Hollister, didn't move. Her eyes went to the baby, then back to Jacob's face. She was reading him, he realized, deciding if this was a trick, a trap, something dangerous. "The town sent you away?" she said. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am. All of them. Every door I could have found. And now you're here." Clara's expression didn't change. "Do you know what they say about me in town, Mr. Mercer? Jacob Mercer. And I don't care what they say." "You should. They say I killed my own baby. Smothered him in his sleep because I'm wicked or cursed or both." Her voice stayed flat, but Jacob saw her grip tighten on the lamp. "They say any child I touch will die." "My son's already dying." Jacob's voice broke on the last word. "If there's even a chance you can help him, I don't give a damn about rumors." Clara was quiet for a long moment. The wind screamed outside. Snow swirled around Jacob's legs. Then she stepped back. "Come inside. You're letting in the cold." The house was small and neat. A fire burned in the hearth, casting warm light across simple furniture. Everything was clean, ordered, the home of someone who needed control over something in a life that had spiraled into chaos. Clara closed the door and turned to face him. In the better light, Jacob could see the shadows under her eyes, the hollows in her cheeks. This woman hadn't slept properly in a long time. Hadn't eaten properly either. "Let me see him," she said quietly. Jacob unwrapped the blankets with fumbling fingers. His hands were so cold he could barely feel them. Thomas lay exposed, his tiny chest barely moving, his skin a terrible waxy gray. Clara drew in a sharp breath. "How long since he last fed?" 4 days. 4 days. She repeated it like a curse. Her hands hovered over Thomas, trembling slightly. "He should be dead." "He will be. Soon. Unless—" Jacob couldn't finish. Clara looked at him. Really looked, not the dismissive glance most people gave, but a searching examination that made Jacob feel exposed. "I lost my son 3 months ago," she said. "Emmett. He was 8 weeks old." "I'm sorry. My husband blamed me. Said I must have done something wrong. Then he left." Clara's jaw tightened. "The town decided I was guilty too. I haven't spoken to another person in weeks. I get my supplies delivered to avoid the stairs." "I'm not here to judge you, ma'am." "No. You're here because you're desperate." Clara reached out and touched Thomas's hand. Just one finger against his tiny palm. "My body still makes milk. Every morning, every night, a reminder of the child I couldn't save." Jacob's heart pounded. "Then you can—" "I can try." Clara cut him off. "But if your son dies, this town will say I killed him too. They'll run me out, or worse. You understand what you're asking me to risk?" "Yes. And you're asking anyway." "I'm begging." Jacob felt tears burning his eyes. He hadn't cried since Sarah died. Hadn't allowed himself that weakness. But now, standing in this stranger's house with his dying son in his arms, the wall cracked. "Please, I'll do anything. I'll work for you, protect you, whatever you need. Just save my boy." Clara was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Wind rattled the windows. Thomas made a small sound, not a cry, just a weak exhale that might have been his last. "Give him to me," Clara said. She took Thomas from Jacob's arms with careful, experienced hands. The hands of a woman who'd held a baby before, who knew how to support a fragile head, how to cradle a small body. "There's a chair by the fire," Clara said. "Sit down before you collapse. You look half dead yourself." Jacob obeyed. His legs gave out as soon as he reached the chair. He'd been running on nothing but fear and desperation for days. Now that someone else held Thomas, now that there was even a sliver of hope, his body was surrendering. Clara settled into a rocking chair across from him. She adjusted Thomas in her arms, her movements efficient but gentle. "Turn around," she said. "What? Turn around. Give me privacy." Jacob turned his chair to face the wall. He heard the rustle of fabric, the creak of the rocking chair, then silence. His heart hammered. "Please, please, please." The silence stretched. 1 minute, 2. Then he heard it. A small sound. Wet, rhythmic. The sound of a baby nursing. Jacob's whole body shook. He pressed his hand over his mouth to muffle the sob that tore from his chest. His son was drinking. His son was feeding. His son was alive. "That's it," Clara murmured behind him. "That's good. You're doing so well." She wasn't talking to Jacob. She was talking to Thomas. Her voice was soft, tender, the voice of a mother coaxing her child to eat. Time passed. The fire burned low. Outside the storm raged, but inside warmth prevailed. "He's asleep." Jacob turned. Clara was still in the rocking chair, Thomas cradled against her chest. The baby's face was relaxed, peaceful. His color had already begun to change, no longer gray, but something closer to pink. "He took a lot," Clara continued. "He was starving, but he kept it down. That's what matters." She looked at Jacob, and something had shifted in her expression. Not warmth exactly, but the ice had cracked. "Your son is strong, Mr. Mercer." "Jacob." His voice came out hoarse. "Call me Jacob." "Jacob, then." Clara stood carefully cradling Thomas. "He'll need to eat again in a few hours. Newborns nurse constantly. And the storm." She glanced toward the window. "You can't take him back out in that." "I don't have anywhere to take him." Jacob stood too, swaying slightly. "I've been staying at the boarding house, but Mrs. Patterson made it clear I wasn't welcome after today. Something about disturbing her other guests with my begging." "Then you'll stay here." Clara said it like a fact, not an offer. "There's a spare room. It's small, but warm." "I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm telling." Clara's eyes met his. "That baby needs to eat every few hours. I'm not going to let him starve because you're too proud to accept help." Jacob wanted to argue, wanted to point out what people would say, what this would do to her reputation, to both their reputations. But he was too exhausted for pride. And she was right. Thomas's survival mattered more than anything else. "Thank you," he said. "I don't know how to. Don't thank me yet." Clara moved toward a hallway. "Thank me when your son survives his first week." She showed him to a small room off the kitchen. A narrow bed, a simple dresser, a washstand. Clean and spare like the rest of the house. "There are blankets in the dresser," Clara said. "I'll bring Thomas to you when he wakes hungry. You should sleep while you can." She handed him the baby. Their hands touched during the transfer, and Jacob felt the calluses on her palms. Working hands, capable hands. "His name is Thomas," Jacob said. "Thomas Samuel Mercer, after his mother's father." Clara's expression flickered. "That's a good name." She left, closing the door softly behind her. Jacob lay on the narrow bed, Thomas on his chest. He could feel the baby's heartbeat, steady and strong. Could feel each breath in and out, proof of life. "Sarah," he thought. "Our boy's going to make it. I don't know how, but he's going to make it." He fell asleep with his hand on Thomas's back, feeling each rise and fall like a promise. Jacob woke to Thomas crying. Real crying. Strong, demanding, the cry of a hungry baby who expected to be fed. Jacob's heart leaped at the sound. Yesterday, Thomas had been too weak to cry. Now he was angry. A knock at the door. "Jacob." "Yes, he's hungry." Clara entered, already reaching for the baby. Thomas went to her, eagerly rooting toward her before she'd even settled into the chair by the window. Jacob stood awkwardly. "Should I stay?" Clara adjusted Thomas in her arms. "He's your son. You should see him eat." It felt too intimate watching this. But Clara was right. And in the gray morning light, with the storm finally quieting outside, something had shifted between them. They weren't strangers anymore. They were two people bound by the survival of one small child. "How long has it been?" Jacob asked. "Since your son?" 3 months, 2 weeks, 4 days. Clara's voice was steady, but her jaw tightened. "He died in his sleep. One night he was there, breathing warm. The next morning—" She stopped. "I thought I'd done something wrong. Checked him too many times, or not enough. Held him wrong. Fed him wrong. I went over every moment trying to find where I failed." "You didn't fail." "My husband said I did." Clara looked down at Thomas, not at Jacob. "He said if I'd been watching properly, I would have noticed. Would have saved him." She laughed, bitter and short. As if I wasn't watching. As if I ever took my eyes off Emmett for a single moment. Your husband was a fool. My husband was a coward. Clara's voice hardened. He couldn't face his own grief, so he put it on me. Then he ran. She paused. I don't even know if we're still married. He never sent papers. Just disappeared. Jacob thought about Sarah, about the way she'd looked at him in those final moments. The trust in her eyes. The love. She'd believed he could save their son. She'd died believing it. My wife's name was Sarah, he said. She had red hair and freckles and the worst singing voice you ever heard. She sang anyway, all the time. Said life was too short for silence. Clara glanced at him. She sounds lovely. She was. Jacob's throat tightened. She would have been a good mother. I keep thinking about all the things she planned, all the songs she was going to sing to Thomas. He'll never hear her voice. He'll hear yours. The simple statement hit Jacob harder than he expected. Clara was right. Sarah was gone, but Jacob was still here. He could sing to Thomas. Could tell him about his mother. Could keep Sarah alive through stories and memories. Thomas finished nursing and let out a small burp. Clara smiled, the first real smile Jacob had seen from her, and it transformed her face, made her look younger, softer. He's a good eater, she said. Strong. Like his mother. Clara handed Thomas back to Jacob. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Not attraction. They were both too raw for that. But recognition. Understanding. The knowledge that they'd each lost someone irreplaceable and were somehow still standing. I should make breakfast, Clara said, standing. You need to eat too. Can't take care of a baby if you starve yourself. She left before Jacob could respond. He sat in the small room holding his son and felt something he hadn't felt since Sarah died. Hope. Fragile and uncertain, but real. By noon, the storm had cleared enough to see the street, and by noon, the street had filled with people staring at Clara's house. They know you're here, Clara said flatly, looking out the window. Mrs. Patterson must have talked, or someone saw you come in last night. Jacob moved to stand beside her, Thomas in his arms. Half a dozen people stood in the snow, not approaching, just watching. Their expressions ranged from curious to hostile. Let them look, Jacob said. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they've already decided is a murderer. They decided I was a madman for asking for help. We're both outcasts now. Clara turned to look at him. That bothers you less than I expected. I spent 2 days begging this town for mercy. They gave me none. Jacob's voice hardened. If they want to judge me for finding someone who would help, let them. Their opinion means nothing to me anymore. A knock at the door interrupted them. Clara's shoulders tensed, but she moved to answer it. Marshal Wade Brennan stood on the porch. He was a big man, gray-haired, with a scar running through his left eyebrow. His badge caught the weak winter sunlight. Mrs. Hollister. His voice was smooth, concerned. I heard there was some disturbance here last night. A man showing up in the storm carrying a baby. I wanted to make sure you were all right. I'm fine, Marshal. Because if someone's troubling you... Wade's eyes moved past her, found Jacob. If someone's forcing their way into your home... No one forced anything. Jacob stepped forward, Thomas still in his arms. Mrs. Hollister offered her help. I accepted. Wade's expression shifted. Just a flicker, but Jacob caught it. Displeasure. Jealousy even. Mr. Mercer. Wade's tone cooled. I heard about your situation. Tragic losing your wife. But surely there are more appropriate arrangements than... He gestured vaguely at the house, the implication clear. Then what, Marshal? Clara's voice sharpened. Then helping a starving baby survive. Then a single woman opening her home to a strange man. Wade directed this at Clara, his voice softening. People will talk, Mrs. Hollister. You know how this town is. I'm only thinking of your welfare. My welfare is my own concern. Is it? Wade took a step closer to Clara. After everything you've been through, I'd hate to see you taken advantage of by someone desperate. Some men, when they're grieving, they'll say anything, do anything to get what they want. Jacob felt anger rise in his chest. The marshal's concern wasn't about propriety. It was about Clara. The way he looked at her spoke to her. This man wanted her, and he didn't like finding Jacob in her house. I think you should leave, Marshal. Jacob's voice was quiet but firm. Wade's eyes snapped to him. Excuse me. Mrs. Hollister said she's fine. I'm telling you, my son is fine thanks to her kindness. You've done your duty checking on us. Now you can leave. The two men stared at each other. Wade was bigger, probably stronger, and he had a gun on his hip. But Jacob had spent too many days being pushed around, dismissed, turned away. He was done backing down. Mr. Mercer. Wade's voice was dangerously soft. You're new to this town. You don't know how things work here. I know that my son was dying, and 47 people slammed their doors in my face. I know that one person once showed enough Christian charity to help. And I know that the only person causing trouble here is the one standing on the porch throwing accusations. Wade's face reddened. For a moment, Jacob thought he might reach for his gun. Then Clara spoke. Thank you for your concern, Marshal Brennan, but Mr. Mercer and his son are my guests. They'll stay as long as they need to. And if I decide that's not appropriate, then I'll remind you that this is my house on my property, and who I allow inside is none of your business. The words hit like a slap. Wade stood frozen, his expression cycling through anger, disbelief, and something that looked almost like hurt. I'm trying to protect you, Clara. I don't need your protection. Wade stared at her for a long moment. Then he put on his hat and stepped back. I hope you know what you're doing, Mrs. Hollister. This town has a long memory for scandal. He left without another word. Clara closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. Her hands were shaking. Who is he to you? Jacob asked. No one. He's been attentive since my husband left, bringing supplies, checking on me. I thought he was being kind. She laughed bitterly. Foolish of me. He's in love with you. He's in love with the idea of saving me. There's a difference. Clara pushed away from the door. But he's also the law in this town, and he doesn't like you. I noticed. He could make things very difficult for both of us. Jacob looked down at Thomas, sleeping peacefully in his arms. His son, his responsibility. He'd promised Sarah he'd protect this child, and he would, no matter what. Then we'll deal with it together, he said. Clara met his eyes. Something passed between them again, that recognition, that understanding. Together, she repeated as if testing the word. You saved my son's life. That means something to me. Whatever trouble comes from this, I'll face it with you. For a long moment, Clara didn't respond. Then slowly she nodded. All right, Jacob Mercer. Together. Outside, the watchers in the street had multiplied. By nightfall, the whole town would know that Clara Hollister had taken in the desperate widower and his dying baby. By morning, the gossip would be everywhere. But for now, in this small house with its fire burning low and a baby sleeping peacefully, none of that mattered. They had survived the longest night. Everything else could wait for tomorrow. 3 days passed. Thomas grew stronger, with each feeding his cries louder, his grip on Jacob's finger tighter. The gray pallor faded from his skin, replaced by the healthy pink of a thriving infant. But as Thomas flourished, the world outside Clara's door grew darker. They're watching again. Jacob stood at the window, Thomas in his arms. Same 3 women from yesterday, just standing there. Let them stand. Clara's voice came from the kitchen. Their feet will freeze before I care. Jacob almost smiled. Almost. You've got a sharp tongue, Mrs. Hollister. It's the only weapon they left me. He turned from the window. Clara was preparing breakfast, her movements efficient and practiced. They'd fallen into a rhythm over the past days. She fed Thomas. Jacob handled everything else. Chopping wood, fetching water, cooking what little food remained in the pantry. It wasn't comfortable, but it worked. "I need to go to town today," Jacob said. "Get supplies, check on my ranch." Clara's hands stilled on the bread she was slicing. "Your ranch. 6 miles north. Small operation. Sarah and I—" He stopped, swallowed. "I haven't been back since she died. The cattle need tending. The roof was leaking before all this started." "You'll take Thomas?" "No." Jacob looked down at his son. "He needs to stay warm, stay fed. I'll be back before dark." Clara turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable. "You trust me alone with your son. You've kept him alive for 3 days. That's more than anyone else in this territory was willing to do." Something flickered in her eyes. Not quite warmth, but the absence of cold. "Be careful in town. Marshal Brennan has been asking questions. Ruth Mackenzie told me yesterday." "Ruth Mackenzie. She runs the boarding house on Miller Street. One of the few people who still speaks to me." Clara paused. "She's also the biggest gossip in 3 counties. If she's warning me about Wade, that means he's being obvious about his interest." Jacob felt his jaw tighten. What kind of interest? The kind that makes a man dangerous when he doesn't get what he wants. They looked at each other across the small kitchen. The fire crackled. Thomas made a soft sound in his sleep. "I'll be careful," Jacob said. "See that you are. Your son needs a father." The town of Stillwater Creek looked different in daylight. Smaller, meaner. The main street was churned mud and dirty snow lined with wooden buildings that had seen better days. A general store, a saloon, a church with a crooked steeple. Jacob felt eyes on him the moment he stepped onto the street. He ignored them. Walked straight to the general store with his head high and his shoulders back. He'd spent 2 days crawling through this town begging for help. That man was dead now, buried with his pride in the snow outside Clara's door. The bell over the door jangled as he entered. Mr. Harwick, the proprietor, looked up from behind the counter. His face went through several expressions: surprise, discomfort, something that might have been guilt. "Mr. Mercer." Harwick's voice was carefully neutral. "Didn't expect to see you." "I need supplies. Flour, coffee, salt, whatever dried meat you have." "Of course. Of course." Harwick moved to gather the items, not meeting Jacob's eyes. "I heard your boy's doing better. That's good, real good." "He is. Thanks to Mrs. Hollister." Harwick flinched at the name. "Yes, well, I'm sure she means well. She saved my son's life. There's no meaning well about it." The door opened behind Jacob. He didn't turn, but he saw Harwick's expression change. Become smaller, more afraid. "Mr. Mercer." Wade Brennan's voice was smooth as oil. "Fancy meeting you here." Jacob turned slowly. The marshal stood just inside the door, his deputy, a young man with nervous eyes, hovering behind him. "Marshal?" Jacob kept his voice flat. "Something I can help you with." "Just doing my rounds. Keeping the peace." Wade smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "How's that baby of yours still alive?" "He's fine." "Good, good. Mrs. Hollister taking good care of him, I expect." Wade stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And taking good care of you too, from what I hear." Jacob's hands curled into fists. "Watch yourself, Marshal." "I'm watching plenty, Mr. Mercer. That's my job." Wade's smile widened. "See, I've been asking around about you. Interesting things I've learned. You used to be a deputy yourself down in Missouri, until you weren't anymore." The words hit like a punch. Jacob felt the blood drain from his face. "What happened down there?" Wade continued, his voice carrying now so everyone in the store could hear. "Why'd you leave? Some folks say it was a scandal. Others say it was worse. That's none of your business. Everything in this town is my business." Wade stepped even closer. close enough that Jacob could smell tobacco and whiskey on his breath. Especially when it involves a vulnerable woman being taken advantage of by a man with a troubled past. I'm not taking advantage of anyone. No. Then why are you still in her house? Baby's healthy now. You could take him anywhere, but you stay, day after day, night after night. Wade's voice dropped to a whisper. What exactly are you getting from Mrs. Hollister? Mr. Mercer? Jacob moved before he could think. His hand shot out and grabbed Wade's collar, yanking the marshal forward until their faces were inches apart. Say that again, Jacob growled. Say one more word about her and I'll break your jaw. Wade's eyes widened, then narrowed with satisfaction. That's assault on a peace officer. Tommy, you saw that. The deputy nodded nervously. I saw it, Marshal. Let him go, Jacob. A new voice, female, sharp as a whip. Jacob turned. A woman stood in the doorway, middle-aged, stout, with iron-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Ruth Mackenzie. Had to be. This doesn't concern you, Ruth. Wade's voice had gone cold. Like hell it doesn't. Ruth marched into the store like she owned it. The whole town can hear you baiting this man Wade Brennan, and we all know why. She stopped beside Jacob, arms crossed. Let him go, now. Unless you want me telling everyone about what really happened to that money from the church fund last spring. Wade's face went white, then red. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he couldn't spit out. This isn't over, he said finally. It is for today. Ruth took Jacob's arm and pulled him toward the counter. Mr. Harwick, get this man his supplies. I'll wait here to make sure there are no more misunderstandings. Wade stared at them both for a long moment. Then he turned and stalked out, his deputy scurrying after him. The door slammed. Jacob let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. Thank you, he said to Ruth. But you shouldn't have done that. He'll make trouble for you now. Wade Brennan's been making trouble for me since he was a boy, stealing apples from my orchard. Ruth's voice was dry. I know too much about him for him to push me far. She studied Jacob's face. You, though, you've got a target on your back now. I can handle myself. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, you just grabbed the only lawman in 100 miles. That's not handling things. That's begging for a noose. Jacob looked away. She was right. He'd let Wade provoke him, played right into the man's hands. What does he want? Jacob asked. Really? Clara Hollister. Ruth said it bluntly. He's been circling her since her husband left, bringing her things, checking on her, waiting for her to be grateful enough or lonely enough or desperate enough to accept him. Ruth's expression hardened. Then you show up, move into her house, and suddenly Wade's looking at competition. I'm not competition. I'm just... You're a man living under her roof. That's enough. Ruth lowered her voice. Listen to me, Jacob Mercer. I don't know you, but Clara's a good woman who's had more than her share of suffering. If you're using her, if you're going to hurt her, I'll make Wade Brennan look like a Sunday school teacher. But if you're genuine, she paused. If you're genuine, then you need to protect her. Because Wade won't stop until he gets what he wants, or destroys anyone who stands in his way. Jacob thought about Clara standing up to Wade on her own porch. The steel in her spine, the fire in her eyes. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Not while Thomas needs her. Not while she'll have us. Ruth studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Good. Now pay for your supplies and get back to her before Wade decides to pay a visit while you're gone. Jacob rode hard through the snow supplies strapped to his horse. Ruth's warning echoed in his mind. Wade won't stop. He should have known this would happen, should have realized that his presence would bring trouble to Clara's door. But what choice did he have? Thomas needed her. And somewhere in the past 3 days, Jacob had started needing her too. Not in the way Wade implied. Nothing like that. But her quiet strength, her sharp tongue, the way she looked at Thomas with a tenderness she tried so hard to hide, these things had become essential somehow. A lifeline he hadn't known he needed. The sun was setting by the time he reached Clara's house. He barely got his horse tied before the front door flew open. Clara stood in the doorway, Thomas in her arms. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with something Jacob hadn't seen in her before. Fear. "Clara? What's wrong?" "Wade was here." Her voice shook. "An hour after you left. He came with papers." "What papers?" "From the town council." Clara thrust them at him with her free hand. "They're ordering us to appear tomorrow, to explain our living arrangements and face charges of public indecency." Jacob took the papers, read them once, twice. His blood turned to ice. "They can't do this. They can do whatever they want. Wade controls the council. He's the law here, the judge, the jury." Clara's voice cracked. "Jacob, if they find us guilty, they can take Thomas away, put him in an orphanage or with another family. They can do that to foundlings and children of immoral parents. Thomas isn't a foundling. He's my son. And you're an unmarried man living with an unmarried woman who's nursing your child. That's all they need." Clara looked down at Thomas, and Jacob saw tears in her eyes. "They're going to take him. Wade is going to take your son to punish me for rejecting him." Jacob felt something shift in his chest. Something hard and cold and certain. "No," he said. He's not. You can't stop him. You said yourself you grabbed him in the store. He'll use that against you. Clara." Jacob stepped closer, taking her shoulders in his hands. "Look at me." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. Thomas between them, sleeping peacefully, unaware that his whole future hung in the balance. "I made a promise to my wife," Jacob said quietly. "I promised her I'd protect our son. Whatever it took, whatever it cost. I've broken a lot of promises in my life, but I won't break that one." "What can you possibly do?" Jacob's mind raced. The council hearing, Wade's power, Clara's reputation, his own tarnished past. All of it stacked against them like a loaded deck. But there was one card they hadn't played. "We get married," Jacob said. Clara stared at him. "What, Sean?" "Tomorrow morning, before the hearing, we go to Reverend Crane and we get married. Legally." Jacob's grip on her shoulders tightened. "They can't charge us with indecency if we're husband and wife. They can't take Thomas if he has two legal parents. And they can't call you an immoral woman if you're Mrs. Jacob Mercer. You're insane." "Probably. We barely know each other. We know enough." "This is..." Clara pulled away from him, pacing. Thomas stirred in her arms, and she automatically adjusted her hold, soothing him without thinking. "This is madness. You can't marry me just to solve a legal problem. Why not people marry for worse reasons? Name one. Money, land, political alliances." Jacob stepped toward her. "We'd be marrying to protect a child, to keep a family together. That's more honorable than half the marriages in this territory. It's not a real marriage. It's as real as we make it." Jacob stopped in front of her. "I'm not asking you to love me, Clara. I'm not asking for anything you're not willing to give. But I am asking you to let me protect you and Thomas the only way I can." Clara looked down at the baby in her arms. Thomas had one hand wrapped around her finger, holding tight even in sleep. "They'll still talk," she said quietly. "They'll say I trapped you, say I'm a husband stealer, a homewrecker. Let them talk. Their words can't hurt us if we're standing together. And after..." Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "When Thomas is weaned, when he doesn't need me anymore, what then?" Jacob hadn't thought that far ahead, couldn't think that far ahead. All he knew was that right now in this moment, Clara and Thomas were the only things that mattered. "We'll figure it out," he said. "Together." Clara was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Wind whistled outside. Thomas slept on, innocent of the decision being made above his head. Then Clara straightened, lifted her chin, met Jacob's eyes with that steel he'd come to recognize. All right, she said. I'll marry you, but I have conditions. Name them. Separate rooms. You stay on your side of the house, I stay on mine. This is a legal arrangement, not a romance. Agreed. Second, you contribute to this household. I'm not a charity case. You work the ranch, you bring in income, you do your share. Agreed. Third, Clara's voice wavered just slightly. When Thomas is old enough, when this is over, you leave. No arguments. No trying to make this something it isn't. You take your son, and you go. The words hurt more than Jacob expected, but he nodded. Agreed. Then we have a deal. Clara held out her hand. Partners, Mr. Mercer. Nothing more. Jacob took her hand. Her grip was firm, her palm warm from holding Thomas. Partners, he said. Nothing more. They were married the next morning. Reverend Crane performed the ceremony in his small office behind the church. Ruth Mackenzie served as witness, her expression carefully neutral. The whole thing took less than 10 minutes. Do you, Jacob Samuel Mercer, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And do you, Clara Elizabeth Hollister, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Clara's voice was steady. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. No kiss, no celebration. Just signatures on a document and a ring that Jacob had bought that morning, a simple silver band that felt too light on Clara's finger. They walked out of the church into pale winter sunlight. Ruth fell into step beside them. Well, she said. That's done. It's done. Clara's voice was flat. You know Wade's going to be furious. Let him be furious. Jacob's hand rested on the small of Clara's back, a protective gesture that was already becoming habit. There's nothing he can do now. But even as he said it, Jacob knew it wasn't true. Wade Brennan wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. He'd find another way to strike, another angle of attack. They just had to be ready when it came. The council hearing that afternoon was a farce. Wade sat at the head of the table, his face carefully blank as Jacob presented their marriage certificate. Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, Wade said the words like acid on his tongue. How convenient. Is there a problem, Marshall? Jacob's voice was ice. No problem, just interesting timing. Wade looked at Clara. Yesterday, you were a scandalous woman living in sin. Today, you're a respectable wife. Funny how quickly things change. Is the matter settled? Jacob demanded. Or does the council have more accusations to throw at us? The other council members shifted uncomfortably. They'd been prepared to condemn Clara to take away Jacob's son. The marriage certificate had stolen that power from them. The matter is settled, one of them muttered. For now. For good. Jacob stood, pulling Clara up with him. My wife and I will be going home now, to our house, with our son. He didn't wait for a response, just walked out with Clara at his side, leaving Wade Brennan staring after them with murder in his eyes. That night, after Thomas was fed and sleeping, Clara found Jacob standing at the window. He was watching the darkness outside, his jaw tight. You should sleep, she said. Can't. The hearing went well. The hearing went as expected. Jacob turned to face her. Wade's not finished. You know that. I know. Clara wrapped her arms around herself. But we bought time. That's something. It's not enough. It's all we have. They stood in silence. The fire had burned low. The house was quiet except for Thomas's soft breathing from the other room. Clara. Jacob's voice was rough. What Wade said about my past. About Missouri. You don't have to tell me. I do. He ran a hand through his hair. Before I came here, before Sarah, I had a brother. Daniel. He was younger than me, looked up to me. Jacob's voice broke slightly. There was a robbery. A gang hit the town where we lived. I was supposed to be on duty that night, but I was drunk. I'd been drinking too much and He stopped. Daniel tried to stop them alone. He was 16 years old, and he tried to be the hero I wasn't. Clara didn't move, didn't speak. They killed him. Jacob's eyes were wet. Shot him in the street like a dog, and I was passed out in a saloon 3 blocks away. He looked at Clara directly. That's why I left Missouri. That's why I came here. That's my past. The shameful truth Wade was hinting at. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she crossed the room and stopped in front of him. My husband killed our son, she said quietly. Jacob went still. What? Emmett didn't die in his sleep. That's what I told people because the truth was worse. Clara's voice was barely above a whisper. William was drunk. He dropped Emmett. The baby hit his head on the corner of the stove. 3 days later, my son was dead. Clara! I couldn't save him. I held him for 3 days watching him fade and I couldn't do anything. Tears streamed down her face. William told everyone it was crib death, said if I accused him he'd tell them I did it. And they would have believed him, because he was a man and I was just a wife. Jacob reached out and pulled her into his arms. She resisted for a moment, then collapsed against him sobbing. He held her while she shook his own tears, falling into her hair. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm sorry. I shouldn't. Don't apologize. Jacob's voice was fierce. Don't ever apologize, not to me. They held each other in the firelight, 2 broken people who'd finally found someone who understood. Not lovers, not yet. Maybe not ever. But something deeper than that. Something forged in shared grief and impossible circumstances. We're quite a pair, Clara whispered, finally pulling back slightly. Both of us carrying dead children like stones around our necks. Maybe that's why we found each other. Clara looked up at him. Her face was wet, her eyes red, and she'd never looked more beautiful. Maybe, she said. Or maybe God has a cruel sense of humor. Could be both. Something that might have been a laugh escaped her. Could be. They stood there, not quite embracing, but not pulling apart either. The distance between them had shrunk. Not gone, but smaller than before. I should sleep, Clara said finally. Thomas will be hungry soon. I know. Good night, Jacob. Good night, Clara. She went to her room. Jacob went to his. But for a long time, neither of them slept. They lay in their separate beds, listening to Thomas breathe, thinking about ghosts and guilt, and the strange, painful gift of being understood. Outside, the wind had stopped. The stars were visible for the first time in days. And somewhere in town, Wade Brennan sat alone in his office, staring at a marriage certificate he'd obtained through his deputy. His hands shook with rage. They'd outmaneuvered him, made him look foolish, taken Clara right out from under his nose. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Wade reached for the whiskey bottle on his desk and poured himself a drink. Then another. Then a third. By the time the bottle was empty, he had a plan. Jacob Mercer had a past. Everyone had a past. And Wade Brennan was very good at digging up things people wanted to stay buried. The Mercers had won this battle, but the war was just beginning. 3 weeks into the marriage, Jacob woke to the sound of Clara screaming. He was out of bed and through her door before his mind caught up with his body. Clara sat upright in bed, her hands clutching the blankets, her eyes wild and unfocused. Clara. Jacob grabbed her shoulders. Clara, wake up. She swung at him. Her fist connected with his jaw hard enough to make him see stars. Get away from him! She was still screaming, still trapped in whatever nightmare held her. Don't touch my baby. Don't you touch him. Clara! Jacob shook her harder this time. It's me. It's Jacob. You're safe. Her eyes focused. The wildness faded, replaced by confusion, then horror. Oh God. Her voice broke. Oh God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's fine. Jacob released her shoulders, sat back on his heels. His jaw throbbed. Bad dream. Clara laughed, but there was no humor in it. They're all bad dreams. From the other room, Thomas started crying. The commotion had woken him. Clara moved to get up, but Jacob stopped her. I'll get him. You need a minute. He brought Thomas back to Clara's room. She took the baby automatically, her hands still shaking as she prepared to feed him. Jacob turned to give her privacy, but her voice stopped him. Stay, please. He sat on the edge of her bed facing the wall listening to Thomas nurse. The house was silent except for the baby's small sounds and Clara's ragged breathing. I dream about Emmett, she said quietly. Every night since he died, I see William dropping him. I hear the sound his head made when it hit the stove, and I can never reach him in time. I try and try, but I'm always too slow. I dream about Daniel. Jacob's voice was rough. My brother. I see him walking toward those outlaws calling for me, and I'm trying to move, trying to help, but my legs won't work, like I'm stuck in mud. Does it ever get better? No, but you learn to carry it. Clara was quiet. Thomas finished nursing and fell back asleep, his small body relaxed against her chest. Thank you, she said, for coming when I screamed, for not running. Where would I run to? Most men would run. William certainly did. Jacob turned to face her. In the dim light, she looked fragile in a way she never allowed herself to appear during the day. Younger, more vulnerable. I'm not most men, he said, and I'm definitely not William. Something shifted in Clara's expression, something he couldn't read. No, you're not. They sat in silence until Thomas stirred again. Then Jacob took the baby back to his cradle and returned to his own room, though sleep was a long time coming. The spring dance was Ruth Mackenzie's idea. You need to show your faces, she insisted, standing in Clara's kitchen with her hands on her hips. People are still talking. Best way to stop talk is to act like you've got nothing to hide. We don't have anything to hide, Jacob said. Then prove it. Come to the dance. Let folks see you as a couple, a normal, respectable couple. Clara looked at Jacob. He could see the reluctance in her eyes, the fear. But he could also see something else, a spark of defiance. All right, Clara said. We'll go. The town hall was packed when they arrived. Lanterns hung from the rafters casting warm light over tables of food and a cleared space for dancing. A fiddle player and a man with an accordion provided music. People laughed and talked and pretended not to stare as Jacob and Clara entered. Steady, Jacob murmured, his hand at her back. We've faced worse than a room full of gossips. Have we? We faced Wade Brennan. These folks are amateurs. Clara almost smiled. Almost. They found seats near the edge of the room. Ruth appeared with cups of cider and a running commentary on everyone present. That's Martha Hewitt. Her husband's been stepping out with the blacksmith's wife for a year, and there's old Mr. Crawford. Made his money selling watered-down whiskey to minors. And over there... Ruth! Clara's voice was tired. We get it. Everyone has secrets. That's my point, dear. They've got no business judging you when their own closets are full of skeletons. The music changed to a waltz. Couples moved onto the floor, spinning in practiced patterns. Jacob watched them, remembering the last time he'd danced. Sarah's hand in his, her laughter as he stepped on her feet. We should dance, he said, surprising himself. Clara stiffened. What? One dance. Show them we're not afraid. I am afraid. I know. Do it anyway. He stood and offered his hand. Clara stared at it like it might bite her. Then she placed her palm in his and let him lead her to the floor. They moved awkwardly at first. Clara was stiff, holding herself apart. But Jacob kept his hand steady at her waist, his step slow and patient. Breathe, he said quietly. You're not going to your execution. Feels like it? Just look at me. Ignore everyone else. Clara's eyes met his. Something passed between them, that recognition they'd built over weeks of shared meals and midnight conversations, and the endless care of a small baby. "There you go," Jacob murmured. "That's better." They turned slowly, finding a rhythm. Clara's grip on his shoulder loosened. Her body relaxed just slightly. "People are staring," she whispered. "Let them stare. We've got nothing to prove. Don't we? Not to them, only to ourselves." The music swelled. Other couples spun around them. And for one moment, just one, Jacob forgot about the watching eyes, the whispered judgments, the complicated arrangement that had brought them here. For one moment there was just Clara, the warmth of her hand in his, the smell of lavender soap in her hair, the way she looked at him like he was something worth looking at. Then the moment shattered. "Well, ain't this sweet?" Wade Brennan stood at the edge of the dance floor, a glass of whiskey in his hand, and a smile on his face that didn't reach his eyes. "The happy couple?" Wade continued loud enough for everyone to hear. "Dancing like they haven't got a care in the world, like they didn't get hitched just to avoid a scandal." The music faltered. Couples stopped dancing. All eyes turned to Wade. "Marshall," Jacob's voice was ice. "You've been drinking. Just enough to speak my mind." Wade took a step forward. "See, I've been doing some thinking, and some digging. Interesting things I've found out about you, Mercer." "Wade, stop this!" Ruth pushed through the crowd. "You're making a fool of yourself." "Stay out of this, Ruth. This is between me and the lying bastard who stole what's mine." "I don't belong to you." Clara's voice rang out sharp and clear. "I never belonged to you. I never wanted you." Wade's face contorted. "You would have, eventually, if this son of a bitch hadn't what shown up when my baby was dying, needed help when no one else would give it." Clara stepped forward, putting herself between Jacob and Wade. "You want to know why I never looked twice at you, Wade? Because I could see what you really are. A bully with a badge. A coward who uses power to hurt people weaker than him." The crowd went silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Wade's hand dropped to his gun belt. "You better watch yourself, Clara." "Or what?" Clara's voice didn't waver. "You'll arrest me. Shoot me in front of all these witnesses. You'll do nothing." Jacob stepped beside Clara, his hand on her arm. "Because you're finished here, Brennan. Whatever you think you have on me, whatever dirt you've dug up, it doesn't matter. Clara is my wife. Thomas is my son, and there's nothing you can do to change that." Wade's face went purple with rage. His hand tightened on his gun. For a long, terrible moment, Jacob thought he might actually draw. Then Dr. Whitmore pushed through the crowd. The old doctor looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Jacob." His voice was urgent. "Clara, you need to come home, now." "What's wrong?" Clara's face went white. "Is it Thomas?" "Ruth's daughter is with him. He's fine, but—" Whitmore hesitated. "There's someone at your house. Someone asking for Clara." "Who?" The doctor's expression was grim. "He says he's her husband." William Hollister sat in Clara's kitchen like he owned the place. He was handsome, Jacob noticed, with a twist of something that might have been jealousy. Dark hair, clean-shaven, wearing clothes too expensive for Stillwater Creek. He smiled when Clara and Jacob burst through the door, a charming smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Clara, darling." William stood spreading his arms. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Clara stopped dead. Her face had gone from white to gray. "Get out of my house." "Our house, technically. I am still your husband, after all." "I have a husband." Clara's voice shook. "Jacob Mercer. We're married." William's smile widened. "Ah, yes. I heard about that. Fascinating, really. Because according to the law, you're still Mrs. William Hollister, which makes your little arrangement with Mr. Mercer here somewhat illegal." Jacob stepped forward. "Who the hell are you?" "William Hollister, Clara's first husband. Her only legal husband, if we're being precise." William's eyes swept over Jacob dismissively. I assume you're the rancher who's been playing house with my wife. Clara. Jacob turned to her. Is this true? You're still married to him? I thought... Clara's voice broke. He abandoned me, left me with nothing. I assumed he'd filed for divorce. Why would I do that? William spread his hands innocently. Divorce is messy, expensive, so much simpler to just move on, live separate lives. His smile turned predatory. Of course I didn't expect you to move on quite so dramatically. Married to another man, nursing another man's child. My goodness, Clara. What would your mother say? You murdered our son. The words fell like stones into still water. William's smile flickered just for a second. Now, Clara, we've discussed this. Emmett's death was a tragedy, an accident. These things happen. You were drunk. You dropped him. He died because of you. He died because babies are fragile. William's voice hardened. And frankly, if you'd been watching him properly. Jacob moved. His fist connected with William's jaw, and the man went down crashing into the kitchen table. Clara's plates shattered on the floor. Get up! Jacob stood over him, fists clenched. Get up so I can knock you down again. William touched his jaw, then laughed. Actually laughed. Impressive. But assault isn't going to change the legal situation, Mr. Mercer. He rose slowly, brushing off his coat. Here's how this is going to work. Clara is going to come back to Denver with me. We're going to resume our marriage like none of this unpleasantness ever happened. Over my dead body, Jacob growled. That can be arranged. William's eyes were cold. But I'd prefer a cleaner solution. See, I have certain financial obligations in Denver, debts that require a wife to help manage social situations. Clara was always so good at that. I won't go with you. Clara's voice was steady now, despite the tears on her face. I'll never go anywhere with you again. Then I'll inform the authorities about your bigamous marriage. Mr. Mercer will go to prison. You'll be ruined. And your precious baby Thomas. William smiled. Well, what happens to an infant when both his parents are disgraced? An orphanage, probably. Or maybe some kind family will take him in. Raise him right. Clara made a sound like she'd been stabbed. Jacob felt his blood turn to ice. You can't do that, he said. I can do whatever I want. The law is on my side. William moved toward the door. I'll give you tonight to think about it. Tomorrow morning, Clara will pack her things and come with me. Or I'll destroy every single thing she cares about. He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Clara sank to her knees amid the broken plates, her whole body shaking. Jacob. Her voice was barely a whisper. What do we do? Jacob knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms. I don't know. I don't know. He'll take Thomas. He'll hurt you. He won't. I won't let him. How can you stop him? Jacob held her tighter, his mind racing. William had the law on his side, had power money connections. All Jacob had was a small ranch, a baby, and a woman he was only starting to realize he couldn't live without. I'll find a way, he promised. I'll find a way. But in his heart, he had no idea how. Jahan. The night was the longest of Jacob's life. Clara sat by the window rocking Thomas, staring at nothing. Jacob paced, back and forth, trying to think of solutions that didn't exist. I could kill him. The words came out flat, matter of fact. Wait for him in the dark. Make it look like an accident. No. Clara's voice was tired. That's not who you are. Maybe it needs to be. Then you'd hang, and Thomas would lose his father. Clara looked at him. I won't let that happen. So what? You just go with him? Let him drag you back to that life. Maybe that's what I deserve. Don't. Jacob crossed to her, knelt beside the rocking chair. Don't you dare say that. I was weak, Jacob. I let him hurt Emmett. I didn't stop him, didn't leave. I stayed because I was scared and stupid and— You survived. That's not weak, that's strong. Jacob took her hands. Clara, listen to me. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever William tries to do, we face it together. You're not alone anymore. You're not that woman in Denver who had no one to turn to. You have me now. Do I? Clara's eyes searched his face. Really have you? Or are we still just partners? Jacob? Still just two people with a business arrangement. The question hit him like a punch to the gut, because he didn't know the answer, didn't know what they were anymore. The lines had blurred so completely over the past weeks that he couldn't tell where partnership ended and something else began. I don't know what we are, he admitted, but I know I'm not leaving you. I know I'll fight for you and Thomas until my last breath. That's got to count for something. Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached up and touched his face, her fingers gentle against his skin. It counts for everything, she whispered. They stayed like that, frozen in the moment, as dawn began to lighten the sky. Wade Brennan arrived at 7 in the morning. With him came William Hollister, still smiling that predator's smile. Morning, Mrs. Hollister. William tipped his hat. Ready to go. Her name is Mrs. Mercer, Jacob growled. Not legally. Wade's voice was smug. Mr. Hollister has provided documentation proving his marriage to Clara was never dissolved, which means your marriage is invalid, which means you're both guilty of bigamy. I didn't know. Clara stepped forward. I thought he'd divorced me. I thought— Ignorance isn't a defense. Wade pulled handcuffs from his belt. Jacob Mercer, you're under arrest for— Wait. The voice came from behind them. Everyone turned. Ruth Mackenzie stood at the gate, and she wasn't alone. Behind her stood Reverend Crane, Dr. Whitmore, and at least a dozen other townspeople. What's the meaning of this? Wade demanded. We could ask you the same thing. Ruth's voice was steel. Arresting a man for marrying a woman he believed to be free. That's not law. That's persecution. The law is clear. The law is whatever you decide it is, Wade Brennan. Dr. Whitmore stepped forward. And we're done letting you abuse it. William Hollister's smile faltered for the first time. I have documentation, legal proof. Show me. Reverend Crane extended his hand. I spent 20 years as a clerk before I took the collar. Let me see these documents. William hesitated. Then with obvious reluctance he pulled papers from his coat and handed them over. The Reverend studied them. His expression changed. These are dated from 3 years ago. The seal is wrong. And this signature— He looked at William. This isn't a Colorado seal. It's not even real. This is a forgery. That's ridiculous. Where did you really get these papers, Mr. Hollister? Reverend Crane's voice was sharp. Because I guarantee they won't hold up to scrutiny. William's face went white, then red. You're making a mistake. I have connections. You have nothing. Ruth stepped forward. Word came this morning from Denver. There are people looking for you, Mr. Hollister. People you owe money to. Dangerous people. She smiled grimly. Seems you've been running for months. Stillwater Creek was supposed to be your hiding place. But now— You can't prove any of this. We don't have to prove it. Dr. Whitmore's voice was dry. We just have to send a telegram to Denver with your location. Let the people you're running from prove it for us. William's composure shattered. He looked around wildly, searching for escape, for allies, for anything. He found nothing. This isn't over, he snarled at Clara. You hear me? This isn't— It's over. Jacob stepped forward, placing himself between William and Clara. You're going to leave this town. You're going to forget Clara exists, and you're never going to come back. Or what? Or I'll tell those men from Denver exactly where to find you. Jacob's voice was quiet but deadly. Your choice. William stared at him. For one moment, Jacob thought he might fight, might do something stupid. Then the coward won out over the bully. Fine. William's voice was bitter. Keep her. She was never worth the trouble anyway. He turned and walked away. Didn't look back. Just walked down the street and kept going until he disappeared from sight. Jacob let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Then he turned to Wade Brennan. "And you," Jacob said. "You brought this man here. You helped him try to destroy my family." Wade's face was gray. He looked at the crowd around him, the townspeople he'd bullied and controlled for years, and saw something new in their eyes: contempt. "I was just doing my job," Wade said weakly. "Your job." Ruth's voice dripped with disgust. "Your job was to protect this town. Instead, you used your badge to pursue a woman who didn't want you. You nearly destroyed 2 innocent lives out of jealousy." "I didn't. We saw it, Wade." Reverend Crane's voice was sad. "We all saw it, and we can't unsee it." Wade looked at Clara. Some part of him, some delusional part, still seemed to hope she might defend him. She didn't. "Leave," Clara said quietly. "Don't come back to my house. Don't speak to me. Don't even look at me. We're done." Wade's face crumpled. For a moment he looked like what he really was, underneath all the bluster and cruelty: a sad, lonely man who'd destroyed the only thing he wanted because he couldn't control it. Then his expression hardened. He turned and walked away, his deputy trailing behind him like a lost dog. The crowd began to disperse. Ruth patted Clara's arm and murmured something about coming by later with food. Reverend Crane offered his services if they needed anything. Dr. Whitmore simply nodded and left. Finally, Jacob and Clara were alone. "Is it over?" Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "Is it really over?" "I think so." Jacob pulled her into his arms. "I think it is." Clara buried her face against his chest and sobbed. Relief, fear, exhaustion, all of it pouring out of her in waves. Jacob held her through it all, his own eyes burning with tears he refused to shed. They'd won. Somehow, impossibly, they'd won. But standing there in the morning light, holding his wife, his real wife, in every way that mattered, Jacob realized something else. Somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about survival. Somewhere along the way, he'd fallen in love. That night, after Thomas was fed and sleeping, Clara found Jacob sitting on the porch. He was staring at the stars, a cup of cold coffee forgotten in his hands. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Too much thinking." She sat beside him, close but not touching. "What are you thinking about?" "Us." Jacob turned to look at her. "What we are. What we could be." Clara was quiet for a moment. "You heard me today. When William was there. When Wade had those handcuffs out." She paused. "I would have gone with him." "I know. To protect you. To protect Thomas." "I know that too. I would have sacrificed everything." Clara's voice broke slightly. "That's not how a business partner thinks, Jacob. That's not how someone in a practical arrangement behaves." "No, it's not." They looked at each other. The stars wheeled overhead. The night was cold, but neither of them moved to go inside. "I'm not ready," Clara said softly. "To call this something it might not be. To trust that it's real, that it's..." "That's all right. But I'm not ready to let it go either." She reached out and took his hand. "Is that enough?" "For now." Jacob intertwined his fingers with hers. "It's more than enough. It's everything." They sat together in the darkness, holding hands like teenagers, and let the silence say what words couldn't. Tomorrow there would be questions, complications, the long process of building a life from broken pieces. But tonight there was just this: 2 people who'd found each other against all odds, 2 hearts learning to beat together. It wasn't love yet. but it was becoming. 6 weeks after William disappeared from Stillwater Creek, Clara woke to find Thomas burning with fever. "Jacob!" Her scream tore through the house. "Jacob, wake up!" He was at her door in seconds, his shirt half-buttoned hair wild from sleep. One look at Clara's face, and he crossed the room in 3 strides. "What's wrong?" "Feel him." Clara's hands shook as she held Thomas out. "Feel his skin." Jacob touched his son's forehead. His stomach dropped. The baby was hot, too hot. His skin felt like a stove plate. "How long has he been like this?" "I don't know. I just woke up to feed him and he was—" Clara's voice broke. "He won't nurse. He keeps turning away. Jacob, he's never refused to eat before." Thomas whimpered weakly. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. His breathing came in short, labored gasps. "I'm getting the doctor." Jacob was already moving toward the door. "Don't leave me." Clara grabbed his arm. "Please, don't leave me alone with him. Not if he's going to—" She couldn't finish. Didn't need to. "He's not going to die." Jacob's voice was fierce. "I won't let him. You won't let him." He took her face in his hands. "Listen to me. I need to get Whitmore. You need to keep Thomas cool, wet cloths on his forehead. Can you do that?" Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'll be back in 10 minutes, less. He's going to be fine, Clara. Our boy is going to be fine." He ran. The streets were empty at this hour, but Jacob didn't care who he woke. He pounded on Dr. Whitmore's door until the old man appeared, cursing and fumbling with his suspenders. "Thomas is sick." Jacob grabbed the doctor's arm. "High fever. Won't eat. You need to come now." Whitmore didn't ask questions, just grabbed his bag and followed. They ran back through the darkness, Jacob's heart hammering against his ribs. Every second felt like an eternity. Every breath was a prayer he didn't know he was making. "Please, please, not my son. Not after everything we've survived." Clara had Thomas in the kitchen, stripped down to his diaper-cool cloths on his forehead and chest. The baby was crying now, weak, pitiful sounds that tore at Jacob's soul. "Let me see him." Whitmore moved Clara aside gently. His hands were steady as he examined Thomas, checking his ears, his throat, his belly. "Well," Jacob demanded, "what's wrong with him?" "Ear infection, most likely. They're common in infants this age." Whitmore reached into his bag. "The fever's high, but not dangerous. Not yet. We need to bring it down and keep him hydrated." "He won't nurse," Clara said. "Then we give him water. Small amounts frequently, and we keep him cool." Whitmore looked at both of them. "The next 12 hours will be critical. If the fever breaks, he'll be fine. If it doesn't—" He didn't finish. Didn't need to. "Tell me what to do," Clara said. "I'll do anything. Stay calm. That's the most important thing. Babies sense fear. If you panic, he'll panic." Whitmore handed her a small bottle of medicine. 3 drops in water every 4 hours. It'll help with the pain. The doctor stayed for an hour, showing them how to position Thomas, how to check his temperature, what signs to watch for. Then he left, promising to return at dawn. Jacob and Clara sat together in the kitchen, Thomas between them. The baby had stopped crying, but he wasn't sleeping. His eyes tracked movement, but there was something wrong about the way he looked. Something absent. "He doesn't recognize me." Clara's voice was hollow. "He's looking right at me and he doesn't know who I am." "It's the fever. It's confusing him. What if it's more? What if he's—" She couldn't say the word. Brain damage. The thing every parent feared more than death. "He's going to be fine." Jacob took her hand. "Thomas is strong. He survived his first week with nothing but will and desperation. He'll survive this." "You don't know that." "No, I don't. But I believe it. And right now that's all I've got." Clara looked at him. In the lamplight, her face was drawn with exhaustion and fear. But underneath that, Jacob saw something else. Trust. She trusted him. Even now, even in the worst moment, she believed him. "Stay with me," she whispered. Don't leave. Whatever happens tonight, don't leave. I'm not going anywhere. Jacob squeezed her hand. Not ever. The night stretched into eternity. They took turns holding Thomas, applying cool cloths, dripping water into his mouth. The baby alternated between fitful sleep and weak crying, his fever rising and falling like a tide. At 3 a.m, the fever spiked. Thomas's whole body went rigid, then started shaking. "Jacob!" Clara screamed. "What's happening?" "Seizure!" Jacob grabbed his son, turned him on his side. "From the fever. It'll pass. It'll pass." But his voice shook and his hands shook, and for 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Thomas convulsed in his father's arms. Then it stopped. The baby went limp, his breathing shallow. "Is he—" Clara couldn't finish. Jacob pressed his ear to Thomas's chest. Heartbeat, steady if weak. "He's alive." The words came out broken. "He's still with us." Clara collapsed against Jacob, sobbing. He held her with one arm, Thomas with the other, the three of them huddled together in the darkness. "I can't lose him." Clara gasped. "I can't. Not another one. I can't survive it again." "You won't have to." Jacob's voice was fierce. "He's going to make it. We're all going to make it." "How do you know?" "Because God can't be cruel enough to give us to each other just to take it all away." Jacob pressed his forehead against hers. "Because we've already paid too much, lost too much. This is where it stops. This is where we start to heal." Clara pulled back, looking at him with something raw in her eyes. "Jacob, I love you." The words came out before he could stop them. "I didn't mean to, didn't plan to, but somewhere between the first night you opened your door and right now holding our son together, I fell in love with you. And I'm not going to apologize for it." Clara stared at him. For a long, terrible moment she didn't speak. Then she leaned forward and kissed him. It was brief, desperate, tasting of tears and fear, and something that might have been hope. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "I love you too," she said. "I've loved you for weeks. I was just too scared to say it." Thomas stirred between them, making a small sound. They both looked down. The baby's eyes were clearer. His skin was still warm, but not burning like before. "Jacob!" Clara's voice trembled. "Feel his forehead." He did. The fever was breaking. "Oh, thank God." Clara pressed her lips to Thomas's head. "Thank God, thank God." They sat together as dawn began to lighten the sky, holding their son, holding each other, too exhausted and relieved for words. Thomas was going to live, and something else had been born in the darkness, something neither of them had expected, something real. Dr. Whitmore arrived at dawn to find the fever broken and the patient sleeping peacefully. "Well," he said, checking Thomas's vitals. "Looks like the little fighter pulled through." "Thanks to you," Clara said. "Thanks to both of you. You did everything right." Whitmore packed up his bag. "Keep him quiet for the next few days. Plenty of fluids. He should be back to normal by week's end." After the doctor left, Jacob and Clara sat at the kitchen table. Neither of them had slept. Neither of them cared. "Last night," Clara said quietly. "What you said. What we said. Did you mean it?" "Yes. Did you?" "Every word." Clara reached across the table and took his hand. "This changes things. You know that." "I know. We can't go back to pretending this is just an arrangement." "I don't want to go back." Jacob intertwined his fingers with hers. "I want to move forward. I want to build something real with you. A real marriage. A real family. I'm scared." "So am I." "What if it doesn't work? What if it does?" Jacob stood, moved around the table, knelt beside her chair. "Clara, we've already survived more together than most couples face in a lifetime. We've faced down your husband, the marshal, a town full of gossips. We've held our son through a night of fever and seizures. What can possibly be harder than that? Trusting that it won't be taken away. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Believing I deserve to be happy. You do. Jacob cupped her face in his hands. You deserve everything, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. He kissed her, slow, gentle, a promise instead of a plea. When they pulled apart, Clara was smiling, really smiling for maybe the first time since he'd known her. All right, Jacob Mercer, she said. Let's build a family. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Jacob's life. Thomas recovered, fully, growing stronger and more vocal every day. He'd started making sounds that almost sounded like words ma and da, and a babbling string of syllables that made them both laugh. Clara bloomed. There was no other word for it. The haunted look faded from her eyes. She laughed more, sang while she worked, touched Jacob casually, naturally, like a wife who'd loved her husband for years instead of weeks. And Jacob found himself healing too. The nightmares about Daniel came less frequently. The guilt that had driven him for so long began to loosen its grip. He caught himself thinking about the future, really thinking about it for the first time since Sarah died. You're smiling again, Ruth observed during one of her visits. Both of you. It's good to see. We're happy, Clara said simply. I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that again. You deserve it, dear, after everything you've been through. We both do. Clara glanced at Jacob, who was teaching Thomas to clap his hands on the other side of the room. He saved me, Ruth, in ways he doesn't even know. Seems to me you saved each other. That night, after Thomas was asleep, Clara and Jacob sat together on the porch. They did this every evening now, watching the stars, talking about everything and nothing, just being together. Ruth's right, you know. Clara leaned against his shoulder. We saved each other. I knocked on your door because I had no other choice. And I opened it because I was dying inside and didn't know how to stop. Clara looked up at him. You gave me a reason to live again, Jacob. You and Thomas. That's not nothing. You gave me the same thing. Jacob wrapped his arm around her. I was drowning in guilt when I came to this town, convinced I was cursed, convinced anyone I loved would die. And now I think maybe the curse is broken. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Maybe we both are. They sat in comfortable silence. The night was warm for spring, the air sweet with the scent of wildflowers. I want another baby, Clara said suddenly. Jacob went still. What? A baby of our own, yours and mine. Clara turned to face him. Thomas is wonderful. He's mine in every way that matters, but I want to carry your child. I want us to have that together. Clara, are you sure? After what you went through with Emmett? I'm terrified. Her voice was honest. But I'm also ready. I didn't think I would be, but I am. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. I want this, Jacob. Do you? Jacob looked at her. This woman who'd opened her door to a stranger, who'd saved his son and then saved him, who'd become his wife, his partner, his love. Yes, he said. I want this. I want everything with you. Clara smiled. That beautiful, rare smile that made his heart stop. Then let's not wait. She kissed him. And this time there was nothing desperate about it, nothing fearful, just love pure and simple between two people who'd earned every moment of happiness they could steal. 3 weeks later, Clara missed her monthly bleeding. She didn't tell Jacob right away, didn't want to get his hopes up if she was wrong. But when 2 weeks passed and still nothing came, she allowed herself to believe. She told him on a Sunday morning while Thomas napped and the house was quiet. I'm pregnant. Jacob stared at her. What? I'm going to have a baby. Our baby. Clara's voice trembled. "I saw Dr. Whitmore yesterday. He confirmed it." For a long moment, Jacob didn't move. Then he swept her into his arms and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time. "A baby," he said. "Our baby. You're happy. Happy." He set her down, cupped her face in his hands. "Clara, I'm the happiest man in the territory. Maybe the whole country." "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if something goes wrong? What if—" "Then we face it together, just like we've faced everything else." Jacob kissed her forehead. "Whatever comes, we handle it. That's what we do." "That's what we do," Clara repeated. And for the first time, she actually believed it. They decided to keep the news quiet for a few weeks. Too many pregnancies ended early, and Clara couldn't bear the idea of having to untell people. But Ruth guessed within days. "You're glowing," she said flatly. "Either you're pregnant, or you've discovered some miracle cream. And I know they don't sell miracle cream in Stillwater Creek." Clara laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's had 6 of her own." Ruth hugged her. "Congratulations, dear. You deserve this joy." "I'm terrified." "Of course you are. Any mother who isn't terrified isn't paying attention." Ruth pulled back, her expression serious. "But you're not alone this time. You have Jacob. You have friends. You have a whole town that's finally seen what you really are." "And what's that?" "Strong. Kind. The sort of woman who opens her door in the middle of a blizzard to save a stranger's baby." Ruth smiled. "That's not nothing, Clara Mercer. That's everything." Summer came to Stillwater Creek, bringing warmth and wildflowers and the bustle of ranching season. Jacob split his time between Clara's house and the ranch, gradually merging the two operations. He sold some of his cattle, bought supplies for the ranch, started making plans to expand the cabin. "We'll need more room," he told Clara one evening. "When the baby comes, Thomas needs his own space, and eventually..." "Eventually, what?" "Eventually, we might have more than one," Jacob grinned. "If we're lucky," Clara laughed. "One at a time, Mr. Mercer. Let's get through this pregnancy before we plan the next." But she was laughing, really laughing. And that was miracle enough. Thomas celebrated his 6-month birthday with a small party at Ruth's boarding house. He was sitting up on his own now, grabbing everything in reach, babbling constantly. He had Sarah's eyes bright blue, full of curiosity, and Jacob's stubbornness. "Dada," Thomas said, clearly reaching for Jacob. The room went silent. "Did he just—" Clara's hand flew to her mouth. "Dada," Thomas repeated louder this time. "Dada, dada, dada." Jacob scooped his son into his arms, tears streaming down his face. "That's right, buddy. Dada's here. Dada's right here." Clara was crying too. Ruth was crying. Even Dr. Whitmore, who claimed to be too old for sentiment, was suspiciously misty-eyed. "His first word," Clara whispered. "His first word was your name." "Mama's next," Jacob said. "Right, Thomas. Can you say Mama?" "Dada," Thomas replied firmly. Everyone laughed. And in that moment, surrounded by friends and family and love, Jacob felt something click into place. This was it. This was what he'd been searching for all those years. Not a ranch. Not success. Not even redemption for his past failures. Just this. A family. A home. A place to belong. That night, after the party, Jacob took Clara to Sarah's grave. She'd never been there before. Jacob had talked about it, but somehow taking her had felt wrong, like he'd be betraying one woman by bringing another. Now it felt right. "Sarah," he said quietly, standing before the simple wooden cross. "This is Clara. She's my wife now. I know that sounds strange, but I think you'd understand. I think you'd be glad I'm not alone anymore." Clara squeezed his hand, but didn't speak. She saved Thomas Sarah. The night he was born, when everyone else turned us away, Clara opened her door. She kept him alive. Kept me alive too, though she'd probably deny it. He paused, gathering himself. I still love you. I'll always love you. But I love her too. Different, but no less real. Jacob's voice broke. I hope that's okay. I hope wherever you are, you're at peace with what I've built here. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called. Thank you, Clara said softly, for bringing me here, for sharing her with me. She'd want to know you. If she'd lived, I think you two would have been friends. Tell me about her. Clara sat down beside the grave. Tell me everything. So Jacob did. He told Clara about meeting Sarah at a church social in Missouri, about their courtship, their wedding, the long journey west. He told her about Sarah's terrible singing and her wonderful cooking and the way she laughed at his jokes even when they weren't funny. He talked until his voice gave out, and Clara listened to every word. She sounds wonderful, Clara said finally. She was, but so are you. Jacob helped Clara to her feet. Different, wonderful, equally important. I wish I could have met her. So do I. Jacob touched the cross one last time. But I think she's watching. I think she knows. And I think she approves. They walked home hand in hand, the sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Behind them the cross stood silent in the fading light. But Jacob could have sworn he felt something warm brush against his cheek as they left. Like a kiss. Like a blessing. Like goodbye. The summer passed in a blur of hard work and quiet happiness. Clara's belly began to swell. Thomas learned to crawl, then pull himself up on furniture. Jacob finished the additions to the ranch house and started talking about moving the family out there full-time. Are you sure? Clara asked. The house in town has been my home for so long. Home is where we are, Jacob said. The three of us, soon to be four. We can make anywhere feel like home. 4. Clara smiled, resting her hands on her growing stomach. Still doesn't feel real. It's real. Jacob pressed his hand over hers. Feel that? That's our daughter. Could be a son. Could be. But I've got a feeling. Clara laughed. Jacob Mercer, you don't know anything about babies. I know I love this one already. I know I love Thomas. I know I love you. He kissed her. That's enough knowing for me. The baby kicked against his palm, strong and insistent. Clara gasped, then laughed again. Feels like she agrees with you. Smart girl, takes after her mother. They stood together as the sun set, feeling their child move between them, thinking about the future they were building. It wasn't the life either of them had planned. Wasn't the family they'd imagined when they were young and foolish, and believed the world owed them happiness. But it was better. Harder won. More precious because of what they'd lost along the way. Jacob? Clara's voice was soft. Yes. Thank you for knocking on my door that night. For not giving up. Thank you for opening it. She leaned against him, solid and warm and real. I love you, she said. I love you too. And there in the golden light of a summer evening, with their son sleeping inside and their daughter growing strong, Jacob Mercer finally understood what Sarah had been trying to tell him all along. Love wasn't about deserving, wasn't about earning, wasn't about being good enough or strong enough or whole enough. Love was just about showing up, opening doors, saying yes when everything in you wanted to say no. Love was Clara. Love was Thomas. Love was the baby on the way. Love was right here, right now, in this imperfect, beautiful life they'd built from the ashes of their grief. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The first snow of winter came early that year, falling soft and silent on the night Clara went into labor. Jacob. Her voice cut through the darkness. Jacob, wake up. It's time. He was out of bed before his eyes fully opened. 8 months of waiting, 8 months of fear and hope tangled together. And now, how bad? He was already pulling on his boots. Bad enough. Clara gripped the bedpost, her knuckles white. Get Ruth. Get the doctor. Hurry. Jacob ran. The streets of Stillwater Creek were empty, blanketed in fresh snow. His boots slipped on the ice, but he kept running. Past the general store, past the church, past all the houses that had once closed their doors to him. Ruth answered on the second knock, already dressed like she'd been expecting this. Clara, she asked. It's time. I'll get Whitmore. You get back to her. Jacob ran again. By the time he burst through the door, Clara was on her hands and knees, gasping through a contraction that seemed to shake her entire body. I'm here. He dropped beside her. I'm here, Clara. I know. She grabbed his hand, squeezed until his bones ground together. I know you are. Thomas woke crying from his cradle. Jacob hesitated, torn between his wife and his son. Go to him. Clara gasped. He needs to know everything's all right. Jacob picked up Thomas, soothed him with whispered words, then placed him in the small bed they'd set up for him last month. The boy was almost a year old now, too big for a cradle, growing every day. Mama. Thomas's eyes were wide, confused. Mama's fine, buddy. She's just working hard right now. Jacob smoothed his son's hair. You go back to sleep. When you wake up, you might have a surprise. Thomas's eyes were already closing. Surprise. The best kind. Ruth arrived with Dr. Whitmore close behind. The old doctor took one look at Clara and started rolling up his sleeves. How long between contractions? 2 minutes, maybe less. Clara's voice was tight with pain. Something's wrong, isn't it? I can feel it. Something's not right. Whitmore examined her quickly. His expression didn't change, but Jacob saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. The baby's turned wrong, Whitmore said quietly. Breach. I'm going to try to reposition, but what? Jacob grabbed the doctor's arm. What does that mean? It means this is going to be difficult. Whitmore met his eyes. Very difficult. Jacob felt the world tilt. Sarah had died in childbirth. The baby had been breached then too. 12 hours of agony, and at the end, no. The word came out broken. No, not again. I can't. Jacob. Clara's voice cut through his panic. Look at me. He looked. She was drenched in sweat. Her face contorted with pain, but her eyes were fierce. I am not Sarah, she said. This is not that night, and I am not going to die. You can't promise that. Watch me. Another contraction hit. Clara screamed. Ruth grabbed her hand, while Whitmore worked trying to turn the baby. The sounds that filled the room were terrible, primal, raw, the sounds of a woman fighting for her life and her child's. Jacob couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All he could do was hold Clara's other hand and pray to a God he wasn't sure he believed in anymore. Please, he whispered. Please don't take her. Not her. Not now. The hours blurred together. Midnight passed. 1 in the morning. 2. Clara pushed and screamed and rested and pushed again. Whitmore's face grew grimmer. Ruth's prayers grew more fervent. I can't. Clara gasped somewhere around 3. I can't do this anymore. Yes, you can. Jacob pressed his forehead to hers. You're the strongest person I know. You survived your husband. You survived losing Emmett. You survived everything this town threw at you. You can survive this. What if I can't? Then we'll figure it out together. Same as always. Clara laughed or sobbed, it was hard to tell which. You're impossible. I learned from the best. Mr. Mercer. Whitmore's voice was urgent. I need you to support her. She needs to push now. One final push. Jacob positioned himself behind Clara, holding her up. She was trembling, exhausted, running on nothing but will. "Ready," he whispered. "No." "Do it anyway." Clara screamed. The sound seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her body, deeper than her soul. She pushed with everything she had left. And then, a new sound, thin and reedy and absolutely beautiful. A baby's cry. "It's a girl!" Whitmore's voice cracked with relief. "A healthy baby girl." Clara collapsed against Jacob, sobbing. He held her, tears streaming down his own face, watching as Ruth cleaned the baby and wrapped her in a blanket. "Let me see her," Clara whispered. "Please." Ruth placed the baby in Clara's arms. She was perfect. Tiny and red-faced and screaming with outrage at being forced into the world, but perfect. "Hello, little one," Clara breathed. "Hello, my daughter." "She needs a name," Jacob said. Clara looked up at him. Her face was pale, her hair soaked with sweat, but she'd never looked more beautiful. "Sarah," she said. "I want to call her Sarah, after the woman who gave me my son." Jacob's throat closed. He tried to speak and couldn't. "Is that all right?" Clara's voice was uncertain. "If it's too painful, it's perfect." He managed the words through tears. "Sarah Emmeline Mercer, after both the children we lost." "Sarah Emmeline." Clara pressed a kiss to the baby's forehead. "Welcome to the family, sweetheart. You have no idea how much we've been waiting for you." Dawn broke over Stillwater Creek, painting the snow-covered world in shades of gold and pink. Thomas woke to find his father sitting beside his bed holding something wrapped in blankets. "Surprise!" Thomas rubbed his eyes. "Come see." Jacob lowered the bundle so Thomas could look. "This is your sister, Thomas. Her name is Sarah." Thomas peered at the baby with deep suspicion. "Small. She'll get bigger." Loud. As if on cue, Sarah began to cry. Thomas clapped his hands over his ears. "Loud," he confirmed. Jacob laughed, really laughed for the first time in hours. "Yeah, buddy, she's loud, but you were loud too once, and I loved you anyway." Thomas considered this. Then very carefully, he reached out and touched Sarah's tiny hand. "My sister," he said solemnly. "Your sister. I protect her." Jacob's heart swelled. This boy, this miracle child who'd survived against all odds, was already ready to be a big brother. Already ready to love someone new. "That's right," Jacob said. "We all protect her. That's what family does." He carried Thomas to Clara's room. She was propped up against the pillows, exhausted, but glowing. Ruth had helped her wash and change, and though dark circles ringed her eyes, she was smiling. "Mama." Thomas squirmed out of Jacob's arms and climbed onto the bed. "Mama, I saw sister. She's loud." "She is loud," Clara agreed. "But she'll learn to be quiet, eventually." "When? Maybe never." Clara kissed his forehead. "Some of us are just loud, Thomas, and that's okay." Ruth appeared in the doorway. "I hate to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. Several someones, actually." The visitors came in a steady stream throughout the morning. First was Reverend Crane, who prayed over the baby and declared her a blessing from heaven. Then came Dr. Whitmore's wife with a basket of food. Then the women from the church, the same women who'd crossed the street to avoid Clara a year ago. "She's beautiful," Martha Hewitt said, peering at Sarah. "Absolutely beautiful." "Thank you." Clara's voice was polite, but cool. She hadn't forgotten how these women had treated her. Martha had the grace to look ashamed. "Mrs. Mercer, I want you to know. That is, we all want you to know. We're sorry for how we acted when you first came here. We were wrong." "Yes, you were." "Can you forgive us?" Clara looked at Jacob. He gave her a small nod. "I can try," Clara said, "but forgiveness takes time." "We'll wait." Martha squeezed her hand. "However long it takes." After the visitors left, Jacob sat beside Clara's bed, watching her feed their daughter. You were generous with them, he said. More generous than they deserved. Maybe. Clara adjusted Sarah's position. But I'm tired of carrying grudges. They're heavy, and I've got enough to carry now. You've got me to help carry. I know. She smiled at him. That's the only reason I can put some of it down. The weeks that followed were chaos in the best possible way. Sarah was nothing like Thomas had been as an infant. Where Thomas had been quiet and watchful, Sarah was demanding. She wanted to eat constantly, be held, constantly, be the center of attention at all times. She's got your stubbornness, Jacob told Clara during one particularly long night, and your lungs. Clara rocked the screaming baby. This child can outcry a thunderstorm. I heard that. Thomas appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Baby loud again. Baby's always loud, buddy. Come here. Thomas crawled into bed between his parents. Sarah continued to wail. Nobody slept. But somehow, impossibly, they were happy. Jacob watched his family in the gray light of pre-dawn. Clara exhausted, but determined, Thomas snuggled against her side. Sarah finally quieting in her arms and felt something settle in his chest. This was it. This was what he'd been looking for all along. Not perfection, not peace. Just this. This beautiful, exhausting, impossible life with these people he loved more than he'd ever thought possible. What are you thinking? Clara asked softly. That I'm the luckiest man alive. You're delirious from lack of sleep. That too. He leaned over and kissed her forehead. But mostly, the lucky thing. Spring arrived, slowly melting the snow and coaxing green shoots from the frozen ground. Sarah grew. She slept through the night at 8 weeks, smiled at 10, laughed at 12. Each milestone felt like a victory, a defiance of all the things that had tried to destroy them. Thomas turned 1 year old. They threw a party at the ranch Jacob had finally finished expanding. Ruth came and Dr. Whitmore and Reverend Crane and even some of the townswomen who were slowly earning their way back into Clara's good graces. A year ago, Ruth said, watching Thomas smash cake with both hands, you knocked on doors in a blizzard with a dying baby. Now look at you. A lot can change in a year, Jacob said. A lot has changed. Ruth squeezed his arm. You did good, Jacob Mercer. Both of you did. That night, after the guests had gone and the children were asleep, Clara found Jacob standing at Sarah Mercer's grave. They'd moved it to the ranch when they moved out of town. Jacob couldn't bear to leave her behind. Talking to her again? Clara asked, slipping her hand into his. Telling her about the party. About Thomas's cake disaster. Jacob smiled. I like to think she's watching, that she knows. I'm sure she does. I asked her something else too. What? Jacob turned to face Clara. His eyes were serious in the moonlight. I asked if she'd mind if I was truly completely happy. If I loved you without any guilt or reservation. If I moved forward instead of looking back. What did she say? She said, Jacob's voice broke slightly. She said it's about time. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Jacob, I spent so long feeling like I didn't deserve happiness, like loving you was somehow betraying her. But it's not. Love isn't finite. It grows the more you give it away. That's what I've learned too. Clara touched his face. Emmett will always be my first child, but that doesn't mean I love Thomas and Sarah any less. It just means my heart got bigger. Our hearts got bigger. Jacob pulled her close. Together. They stood there as the stars wheeled overhead, holding each other, thinking about all the paths that had led them here. 2 strangers, 2 tragedies, 1 impossible night that changed everything. Jacob, Clara's voice was soft. Yes, take me home. He smiled. We're already home. No. She looked up at him, and there was something in her eyes, something warm and wanting and absolutely certain. Take me home. He understood, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't think about the past, didn't think about grief or loss or the long road that had brought them here. He thought only about the future, about Clara, about their children sleeping inside the house they'd built together. "Let's go home," he said, and they did. 2 years later, on a cold winter night, much like the one where it all began, Clara told Jacob she was pregnant again. They were sitting by the fire, Thomas playing with wooden blocks at their feet, Sarah sleeping in her cradle. The house was warm, full of the sounds of family. "Are you happy?" Clara asked. "Happier than I've ever been." Jacob pulled her close. "You, terrified and grateful, and so in love, I can barely stand it." "That sounds about right." Thomas looked up from his blocks. "Mama, what's for dinner?" "Your favorite, chicken and dumplings. With gravy. Always with gravy." Thomas returned to his building satisfied. Sarah stirred in her cradle but didn't wake. "This is what I wanted," Clara said quietly. "When I was young before everything went wrong. This is what I dreamed of. A husband who loved me. Children who needed me. A home that felt safe. And now you have it. Now we have it." She turned to look at him. "We built this, Jacob. From nothing. From grief and desperation and a night when everything seemed impossible. We did." He kissed her softly. "And we'll keep building. Whatever comes next, whatever challenges we face, we'll face them together." "Together," Clara repeated. "I like that word." "So do I." Sarah woke crying for attention. Thomas abandoned his blocks to peer into the cradle. "Sister loud again," he announced. "Sister's always loud," Jacob said. "Always," Thomas agreed solemnly. Clara laughed, scooping up her daughter. Jacob pulled Thomas onto his lap. The four of them, soon to be 5, sat together by the fire as snow began to fall outside. The same snow that had fallen the night Jacob knocked on Clara's door. The same cold that had nearly killed his son. But everything was different now. The snow was beautiful instead of terrifying. The cold was kept at bay by warmth they'd built themselves. "Papa," Thomas's voice was sleepy. "Yes, buddy." "Tell me the story. About the night you found Mama." Jacob looked at Clara. She nodded, smiling. "It was the worst night of my life," Jacob began. "I had a baby that was you, and you were very sick. I knocked on every door in town, but nobody would help." "Why not?" "Because sometimes people are scared, and scared people aren't always kind. But Mama wasn't scared. Mama was the bravest person in the whole territory." Jacob's voice was soft. "She opened her door to a stranger in the middle of a blizzard. She saved your life, Thomas. And then she saved mine." "How?" "By teaching me that love is stronger than fear. That family is about choice, not just blood. That even the most broken people can build something beautiful together." Thomas considered this. "I love Mama. I love her too, buddy, more than anything." Clara reached over and took Jacob's hand. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. "And I love both of you," she said. "All of you. This family we made from nothing." "Not nothing," Jacob corrected. "From hope, from faith, from the stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better than today." "Was it better?" Jacob looked around the room, at Thomas sleepy and content in his lap, at Sarah nursing peacefully in Clara's arms, at Clara herself, this woman who'd become his whole world. "Yes," he said. "It was better. It is better. Every day." Outside, the snow continued to fall. Inside, a family sat together by the fire, warm and safe and loved. They had started as strangers, as two broken people drowning in grief, as a father willing to beg and a widow brave enough to open her door. Now they were so much more. Jacob Mercer had knocked on 47 doors the night his son was dying. 47 people had turned him away. But the 48th door had opened, and behind it he'd found everything he'd ever wanted, everything he'd ever needed, everything he'd never known he was searching for. A home, a family, a love that had grown from the ashes of loss. The storms would come again. They always did. But this family had learned something that no storm could take away. They had learned that love wasn't about deserving. It was about choosing, every day, every moment, choosing to stay, choosing to fight, choosing to believe that the person beside you was worth everything you had to give. Clara had made that choice when she opened her door to a stranger. Jacob had made it when he refused to give up, and together they would keep making it. For Thomas, for Sarah, for the baby growing even now in Clara's belly, for each other. Jacob, Clara's voice was soft in the firelight. Yes. Thank you for knocking on my door. He smiled, pulling his family closer. Thank you for answering. The fire crackled. The snow fell. The children slept. And in a small house in Stillwater Creek, Montana, two people who had lost everything found something they never expected. Each other. A future. A love that would last the rest of their lives. That was what remained when grief finally loosened its grip. Not the pain, not the loss, not the long nights of despair, just love, simple and complicated, earned through suffering, precious because it was real. Jacob Mercer had begged for milk on the coldest night of his life, and a grieving widow had given him something far more valuable. She had given him hope. She had given him family. She had given him home. And in the end, that was everything.